name is Amy Caslow, and I know about a third of you, which is really cool. I love seeing new faces. And then the third I know, I've known for a very long time. So it's pretty wonderful. We are in a special time in this country. Cuba calls it the special period. They have their own issues. But we're in a very tender time for the country, for the world. The gallery curated an exhibition called Art and Autocracy in the Americas. It took us 3 years to put this together. We started in between the Trump administrations. We had no idea that a leading American artist, Mimi Herbert, who's in the National Gallery of Art and a number of other big names in town, we had no idea that she would be the lead artist in Art and Autocracy in the Americas. But that's where we are. Very, very close to the final curation, we met Francisco. And what a meeting it was. Extremely interesting, absolutely perfect timing, because two of his works that we'll discuss this evening, flanking our conversation, two of his works were in this exhibition. We extended the exhibition through the summer. We hosted universities, we hosted Georgetown University, we hosted students, we hosted professors, we hosted campers who came in and looked at this art. Young minds came in and tried to discern in their own way what all of this means. It got a lot of attention, and I'm glad it had a big run, and I'm glad that your work had a lot of eyes on it. We're storytellers here, and tonight is about a very local and a very international story. For many of us, it's quite poignant, and I think my friend here, my new friend here, has a big fan club, many of whom are here. How many folks know Francisco? That's pretty good, right? So we call this a friendly crowd, right? This is a friendly crowd. So, art and resistance. It's age-old, from the earliest days, caveman paintings, to the most recent installation, that gold monument that was sitting on the mall for a little while, got summarily removed by the I believe it was the Park Service you know who it was, Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein in friendship mode. That was, I don't know if you saw that this week, but it was quite something. But art and resistance takes all forms, and it has a great deal of power when deployed well. It is, it's about change. It's about really creating movement. It's about pushing. It's about realizing. And to a great extent, that's what our friend here has done during his lifetime. So, Francisco Letelier, I want you to tell us about building solidarity to support movements toward democracy. And for those of you who are not familiar, and there are a lot of us who are not familiar, tell us about your background and how important is that as a stimulant to what you do?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Amy. Sorry, many of you have known me for a long time, so you know the answers to this question. My father, Orlando, when I was a kid, we lived here in Bethesda for a while and returned to Chile for the Allende government. Salvador Allende was elected in 1970, and we thought we had returned to Chile, but immediately Salvador Allende appointed my father as his ambassador here in Washington, D.C. And then we returned to Chile again. and we were in Chile when the coup occurred. My father was held prisoner, along with many thousands of other people, and many people lost their lives at that time and during the dictatorship. But specific to my father, when he was released, we returned to Washington, D.C., where he dedicated himself to restore democracy in Chile. And my father was an economist. He wasn't a politician, so to speak. He never held an elected office.
He was a minister.
Yes, he was a cabinet minister for Salvador Allende, but he wasn't somebody who ran for office ever. Often people think of him as a politician, but he was appointed as a minister because of his knowledge and his technical knowledge about economics. Some of you may remember that Chile is one of the largest producers of copper in the world. At that time, Chile was considered a country in development, and the United States owned most of our copper, and one of the main programs of the Chilean government was to nationalize the copper. And my father was an expert in copper. And he was essential for the idea of how do we create a new Chile. We were living in Washington, D.C. here when on September 21st, 1976, agents sent by Augusto Pinochet planted a bomb in his car, and the bomb was detonated along with the help of other terrorists, anti-Castro terrorists that collaborated with the agents that were sent from Chile. The bomb was detonated while they were on their way to work, and my father and his co-worker died in a spectacular bombing for Washington, D.C., but any nation's capital up to that point. It was the first international terrorist act ever to occur in a nation's capital. It happened on Sheridan Circle, right on Embassy Row. I often tell people and remind people that because it happened there, many people know my father's name. But thousands of other people lost their lives in events that were no less tragic, brutal, and violent. It's important to remember that. But a year after the death, I was around 17 years old when this death happened. I was a student at Walt Whitman High School.
Who else was a student at Walt Whitman?
I was
High
there
School?
that day.
Yes.
You were at Walt Whitman,
And in the class.
in his class?
Yes.
Yeah, right down there. Oh. Yeah.
And a year after that, Chileans, this is 3 or 4 years out of the coup. Millions of Chileans have left Chile. One of the first things that the military rulers in Chile did was whitewash the murals, make the music illegal, chase down artists and intellectuals, and slowly, and a lot like what's been happening here, ways of life that seem to belong to all Chileans, and here, like all Americans, started becoming illegal, proscribed, hunted down. And so for the first anniversary of my father's death, the Chilean community, with other supporters, came together in Rock Creek Park and painted a mural, a Chilean-style mural. Now, Chilean murals are characterized by a theme, an idea that was prevalent during the Allende government. Chilean murals weren't a traditional art form. They were a nascent art form that came together during the Allende government. Politicized youth in the past had hit the streets to write the names of political candidates on the street because working class candidates didn't have money to pay for billboards or radio ads or TV ads or ads in the papers. So it was typical that working class candidates would get squads of young kids to go out and write Allende on a big wall, or anyone else. But during the Allende government, what happened is that artists hooked up with these squads of people, and brigades got formed, brigades of muralists. At first, a very simple language of people, a name, a fist, a flower, and always done collectively and with a lot of people. Wow, that sounds so simple. I could do that in my elementary school with kids. I could do that with my neighbors. It was that simple. And because of its simplicity, it's just like breathing in and out. You know how people tell you, just breathe, just breathe.
Was it contagious?
It was contagious, and it really spilled over the idea of participatory and collective art. So after that,
Who was participating?
Well,
And
definitely.
Was it divided by class? Was it divided by beliefs, and surely by beliefs, but economics?
Many people participated in the murals, especially at the beginning. Many of you know that the Allende government was destabilized through disinformation and campaigns to push the boogie monster of communism. It was the Cold War. It was easy. People were susceptible, and great resources were thrown at this. So in the beginning, many people participated, university students, high school students, and of course, people who supported the Allende platform, because in the first years of Allende's presidency, before things became so polarized, he still continued to gain more supporters. So more and more people were supporting the culture that was being created, and the murals were a big deal. It was kind of a renaissance of art. So fast forward to 1977, and this first mural we create for the commemoration of my father's death, we decided, we need to make a mural brigade here in the United States to communicate to people about what's happening in Chile. And that's how we started using art here in the United States to tell people about Chile. But all of you in this room know that solidarity is always a two-way street. I speak English like an American. I still speak Spanish like a Chilean. I didn't call, in the past, people go, pucha Pancho, pucha que está agringao. You turned into a gringo. Because we were also saturated with this idea of nation. And what is the United States? Now I say, thank God that I'm agringado, because I'm proud to be with all the people who really are backbones of this nation.
Okay, we're gonna back up a little bit. The politicization of art and the art of politics. Hello. And the art of politics is threatening. And
I want this door.
we have
Thank you.
we have threats
Thank you.
against artists. We have threats against people who support certain art. We have the elimination of art forms because it doesn't please authorities. What kind of impact do muralists have, and your kind of work? What are you doing? Why are you? I understand why you're doing it. What kind of impact do you have?
Right. I always, when I work with communities, because often I work in communities that really the political, intellectual portion of everything is just put aside for me, because I'm really about working with people and finding common ground. And as soon as
Give us an example.
Well, in the beginning, when we started painting murals, for example, we would be invited to paint a mural by a church group who had received some Chilean refugees somewhere. This was a church group that really believed in helping refugees. They didn't really quite understand the political, fully understand the political ramifications of everything, but they believed that political refugees should be received, welcomed, and be taken care of. And we could have come out of the gates painting red flags and fists, but we already knew enough that solidarity is a two-way street.
This is a beautiful segue into these works here, because these are intense, forceful, and also quite beautiful. And the fusion of botanical with human, with industrial, with fight, and also the fusion of struggles. Tell us about these paintings.
Sure.
And how, and really, the construct, and not the physical construct, but sort of your mental construct on these.
Yeah, and you're quite right. It's a good departure point, because my idea of I'm sorry.
I just want to say, take a look at these. If you can't see them now, I can be a Carol Merrill and show them, because they're really quite striking.
My kind of inherited belief from what it meant to be a Chilean and an exile had to do with, hey, you're going into a community, you're not coming to teach anyone anything. You believe in people. Go into a community and find out what's important for them. See if it's important for you and build on that. And slowly, over dinner, so to speak, we begin to share. That's what's beautiful about murals and working alongside someone. People build trust when you work alongside. You can go, oh, all of that, but I saw you sweat, I saw you eat, I saw you work with us, we have this, we created something together. So it's always been an idea in my head. Now these paintings here, one addresses the estallido social in Chile in 2019 and it's a really good moment to talk about democracy, because up to 2019, everyone talked about, oh, Chile, the dictatorship came, but culture was able to, help push the social movements, and now we're back in democracy. And so everyone was, taking the victor's lap. Yes, democracy. But along with the reestablishment of democracy, we had forgotten that the economic policies that we had inherited during the Pinochet government were eroding ideas of democracy. So in this painting, I basically wanted to say that the people on the street in Santiago not only were demonstrating against these conditions caused by the economic policies inherited from the Pinochet regime, those policies that are called neoliberal policies that obviously, like most people go, oh yeah, I know what that is. And we're not talking about much, but they were policies that privatized interests, that increased the division between rich people and poor people. We have people in the room here who are experts at talking about that and knowing about that. But the people who were demonstrating in Chile at that time during the estallido were people that were carrying things within them. It was during the COVID epidemic. They were hitting the streets. They were demonstrating for what they felt was their entire future. They carried all the beauty of our
Talk about
country.
what the government's behavior during COVID that led to this.
Yes, well, as in many places, in particular in Brazil and here in the United States, many deaths could have been avoided in all three of the countries, Chile, Brazil, the United States, if the rulers of the country had acted like it was something to worry about. But
This was immense frustration boiling.
yes, and it added to the frustrations that many people in Chile felt. And Chile still has and at that time, had a very young median population. And so all of us here in this room, if we look around, our median age is kind of my median age. We're all, So we're talking about people that are 30 years younger than us.
This is Latin America. This is all through the
Yes.
Americas, yeah.
And in Chile, people who have grown up through a dictatorship and now the promise of a democracy, which left them indebted, which left them with parents who had worked all their lives and had had their Social Security benefits cut off, that in order to get a higher education, you had to, just like here, incur enormous debt.
Francisco, you talk about something within, and we're looking at this, and instead of lobbing Molotov cocktails, they have botanicals. Talk about that.
Yes, because what we often forget, we often forget that people in struggle are much more than their struggles. We kind of make people faceless. We talk about victims and people in rubbles and people in jails, but we forget that within them, they have the entirety of cultures, memories, their stories. They embody a nation. And so switching over to this other one, that's called herbarium. Now, many of my works have very specific narratives, and you have to have kind of an explanation of the narrative. I'd like to read you the narrative of this that I wrote down, and it's in that little...
Somebody confiscated your bag.
Oh, well,
Could the guilty party please produce
there's a little
the bag?
computer bag that was back.
While we're
Yeah.
taking a look at this.
So I'll continue to talk about it. But herbarium is based on the demonstrations that were happening at Columbia University very recently. And
Those were
those were the demonstrations against the violence in Gaza. And I was looking for a way in to tell a story. And let me read you the story, because as you all have noticed, I have a rambling way of telling something.
That's okay, we're gonna keep you on track. We're
Yeah,
gonna
thank
keep
you
on
for
track.
that.
But while you're looking, what's interesting is this, you also fuse movements, as we're just about to talk about, demonstrators against the war in Gaza. And I wonder, does that confuse, or does that add clarity?
Mm.
I mean, I can tell you my own perspective, but obviously I wouldn't have it
Yeah.
show confusing work.
I think it can be confusing, or it can be, lovers or people who are interested in history. I was just talking with my son, Salvador, about maxims of history, maxims of truth. You go, why are people fighting? Oh, they're mad at each other. Why are they mad at each other? Well, one did this and one did that. And you keep on getting into the specifics of things. Well, for me, it's very important to demystify the idea that way down there in Latin America, people are having troubles, because we all share these issues in a globalized world. We have so much more in common than we realize, and that's what becomes confusing. It becomes confusing when I'm in Colorado or New Mexico and I go to the Anaconda copper mines and I go, hey, this is where Anaconda started their search for copper. They also have interests in Chile. What did they do to Native people in New Mexico? What are they doing to Native people in Chile? Oh, or right now, lithium in the north of Chile, which is depleting our water resources and, overrunning Native people. But lithium will do that here too, to people here. So we have so much in common, and we can all communicate over our cell phones about it
Well expressed.
with our lithium chips.
Okay, give us a little, give us the skinny on this. What are you about to read?
I'm going to read you something that always accompanies my paintings, which is a text that explains what you're looking at.
Let's have it.
Now I try to make something that people can look at, but I'm not a person that says a picture speaks 1,000 words. If it does, then the title adds to it. Then you add an explanation, then the artist is there, and then you say the artist that made it is from Chile and it came, then you have like 5,000 words. So the more information you have, the better, but it can be confusing. I'm gonna try to read this without my glasses on. The place where Columbia University exists is in the native land of the Lenni Lenape people and Wippinger people, the indigenous residents of Manhattan in the Algonquin language, where the word Manhattan comes from. As part of the New York Botanical Garden, it is one of those most extensive, important, and frequently cited and consulted herbaria in the world. So Columbia College has this great herbarium.
They have the largest collection in the world, don't they?
Yes, in the Western Hemisphere.
I learned that from you.
It has around 7.8 million specimens. They are protecting life on the planet. The protesters in this painting carry flags with images of scenic plants, and they walk through a landscape that contains clouds of tear gas and buildings lost in smoke. The Steer Herbarium holds a historical collection of the seeds and plants used by original natives. Research shows that the agricultural crops by inhabitants included the Three Sisters. Some of you may be remembering this: corn, squash, and beans. Without corn, squash, and beans, there are no Americas as we imagine. But they're crops that grow together and that help each other. Just to say it in a simple way. They're depicted along with broadleaf cattail, used widely by native people of the region, along with examples of the most common thistle that grows in Palestine. Some of you know that a cuba, or the thistle that grows in Palestine, is a native food and a traditional food, and that has been controlled. So Palestinians have a hard time even getting it, although they continue to do it. When I was in Palestine painting on the West Bank, we painted murals just of the thistle of a cuba with the word persist in English and Arabic, because they know that's the plant that if you stamp on it or you burn on it, it will come back. So include that in there to sort of bring home the idea, what a shame that the herbarium pays so much attention to these crops, that all over the world they go to this. But for the demonstrators there, and I don't need to tell you that the majority of them were Jewish students protesting against the violence in Gaza. They had more disregard for the students than they had just for the plants there. This is what I do a lot in my art. There's an opportunity to revisit ideas and find a way to tell stories that have forgotten. We talk about the violence, we talk about the ruins, we talk about the bombs, but what's essential and what will endure and what persists are all these things that are behind the smoke and underneath the rubble, that live in memory. And often when we're reaching events like what's happening in Gaza, I can't even imagine to compare it even to what happened in Chile. It's so horrible. Remember, we walked around thinking Dresden, Krakatoa, like these huge cataclysmic events, and the bombing of Dresden, but they've dropped more fire bombs, and we've polluted the oceans and we've polluted the land, and good luck to anyone that wants to build a resort there. This is a huge environmental catastrophe.
I'm going to interject.
Yes.
With a question. So we have a resurgence of right-wing movements all over the Americas, from here down to Santiago. And this memory of what it was like under Pinochet is a memory of an older generation, a disappearing generation. Where do you see youth? Where do you see art and resistance moving the needle in Chile now?
Well, yes. Well, one thing is that the estallido social was a huge event. We went through a social uprising that changed the lives of Chileans. So
Tell us how.
the whole country rose up against the conditions that were implanted in the country, despite democracy. Democracy isn't enough. We only want to get to democracy so that we have a chance to create a better world. It's kind of like the bottom rung of building a better world, but it's not enough. And also we need to remember, what is democracy? What does it look like? Just like tonight, we have to think about, what does resistance look like? What is that? How do people resist? But the art that young people made at the same time that the estallido social was going was amazing, was incredible. And often when people are presented with the worst conditions, it's when the most love, the most kindness, and the most art comes about. So luckily, I don't really even have to guess, because the arts are so alive in Chile. One thing that the estallido social did was that there was a resurgence of interest in what had happened during the Allende regime, and a resurgence of interest in the music and art that had started there. So the truncated evolution of those ideas has now continued in a big way.
Interesting. That is very interesting. And is it a strong movement? Is it powerful?
The power of art in Chile now just blows you away. When you go to Santiago and you see how many murals, how much art is being created, how much music is resurgent, and all kinds of music. I have to tell people sometimes, the country in the Americas that has the most heavy metal bands? Chile. The other thing I have to tell people is, do you know where the most Palestinians live other than Palestine in the world? Chile. We have a long historical community there. It's just sort of an aside. But
And is there a connection? Is there a strong connection now between these two subgroups? Maybe not subgroups, maybe they're all part of one.
You mean the connection?
The Palestinian community and the youth resistors.
The Palestinian community has been in Chile a long enough time so that everyone in Chile is Palestinian enough. It's enough a part, one of our big soccer teams is Palestino. Everyone in Chile supports Palestine. Many Palestinians came after the Nakba, but many were there before
Not
and
by
preceding.
1948, what the Arabs referred to as 1948, the first war.
Right, and so it's hard to trace because there are sectors of Palestinians that are very politicized, but also I don't want to use the idea of the melting pot, but it's a very mixed and diverse community within Chile as well. They have Palestinian legacy and heritage, but it's pretty across the board politically. But back to the
One more thing, the collapse of Chile's constitutional reform efforts. What kind of impact does that have on civil society?
Well, some of you may know, and some of you may not know, that one of the main platforms of the president that emerged, who's our president right now, Gabriel Boric, one of the main platforms was, we need to address conditions in the country. Augusto Pinochet, the dictator, had thrown away our old constitution and rewritten a constitution, the laws of the land, which helped him stay in power and perpetuated these economic conditions that people had rebelled against during the estallido social. So one of the first things was, we need to reform the Constitution and write a new Constitution. And at the beginning, all of us were really, really optimistic and happy about it. But when many things happened, but we finally submitted the new Constitution to a vote, and it got resoundingly defeated. It was a beautiful document. It was aspirational and idealistic. But Chileans made a mistake, and we in this room make this mistake very often, and it's being made by the present leaders of this country right now. Because we're all in the country together. We have to live with one another. We have to create majorities. No matter how righteous any of us are, we have to live with others, so we need to search common ground. You can't write a constitution that everyone votes for unless you negotiate, compromise, find common ground. I loved that constitution, but many Chileans weren't ready to grant rivers and mountains rights under the Constitution as if they were living entities. I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to debate somebody about it, but I certainly, maybe some of you in this room will go, oh, well, a river is one thing, but a human being is another. Others may go, human beings is what it's all about. I'm a humanist. Everything else doesn't matter. Others will say in the age of the Anthropocene, in the Anthropocene age, living things and our relationships to nature are the most important thing we can pay attention to. The Constitution paid attention to that. It was visionary and important, but it didn't get elected. I think it was too aspirational.
Today, here, I suspect throughout the Americas, is really a gaslighting era where facts go down the drain and all kinds of fabrication rises up. Your work hits hard. It's also multidimensional. It's multi-issue. It's singular in, I think the impact is pretty wow. It's just, one solid impact. But then you have to sort of unpack what's here. Are you now, and will you in the future, try to beat back falsehood, which seems to be the new history?
Right, and
denialism, whatever term you want to use.
One of my forms of resistance, of course, is history and science.
That's pretty obvious here, I think.
I like to be able to say, this is really happening. This is really true. It's not my opinion. We can talk about the color or the wrapping you want in it, but this is true. So I think my current work continues in that vein, that I'm trying to, in my work, revisit the ideas all of us have about things. Today, the first thing we did in Washington, D.C. with my son is
Say hello, son.
walked up the paths that have been deviated and changed of Rock Creek that comes into the Potomac. And we looked at Roosevelt Island, and I explained to them that that's where one of the first genocides in North America occurred, when the Nantucket people suffered from smallpox. The native people that lived here were relegated to that island and disappeared through smallpox. There's no memory of them. Then we walked through the Mount Zion Cemetery that's right off the street in Georgetown. And it's a black cemetery. And the gravestones are knocked over. Any of you who know about American history know we haven't even uncovered the idea that this country is a black country. They weren't just enslaved people. They were people that informed who we were. They lived in the lives of plantation. Have any of you been watching this documentary about Thomas Jefferson right now? Please go back and look at who his family was, and who his wife was, and who his lover was, who bore him children. She was the sister of his wife. She was a black woman. African Americans have accompanied us in our story of America, just like Native people, but we forget. So I want to go back to Rock Creek Park. We drive along the rock. We've forgotten about the stones. We've forgotten about the bedrock of Washington, D.C. Coming up the tunnel from the metro up into Bethesda. Any of you been in that longest escalator I've ever been on in my life?
Yes.
We're going through the bedrock that's underneath our ground up. And there's so much of value and knowledge going back there, because if we know our story, if we know our science, that's the truth. That's the truth.
All right, we're gonna break here for questions. I think this is a good time to break for questions. And would you mind stating your name, even though we've met?
Yes. Hi, I'm Catalina Linden. And my question to you is, as an artist, you touch on a lot of very difficult subjects, but yet it's very colorful and it's very welcoming. How do you stay with it to stay positive and keep
Covering very difficult subjects with very light-filled, beautiful work. How do you stay positive? Did I capture that question?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess, well, on the one hand, it's easy to be in the studio painting. It's more difficult to be in a difficult environment making public art with lots of people. It's even more difficult when you think that somebody might come by and shoot you or take you prisoner. So making art in the studio is easy. And one of the things I always wanted to do when I was a young person was, how can I deal with difficult subjects while transcend those difficult subjects with meaningful, heartfelt ideas?
So this definitely takes you from, a very sort of cement, concrete area of Columbia University, and lights you up with all kinds of stories, colors, layers that we have to search for.
Yes, and it's kind of like the work I'm doing now. I'm doing a series, let's call it the Travelers Series. And it basically shows people from the back, travelers from all over the place. But what I'm trying to emphasize is not what people have, not what people own, but what they carry inside. What they carry inside is the most important thing. So me knowing that makes it possible to walk with people when things look really hard, because many of us know that things may look really beautiful sometimes. They may look as beautiful as Mar-a-Lago. You can gild the Oval Office, you can make it look really great, but it's not that great. It's not beautiful. Beauty is skin deep. And the idea that, oh, I will find peace, I don't want, it never, you know, I understand the idea, but art has the potential, as it always has. I'm not inventing anything, that art is powerful.
Have you had negative reactions to your work? Have you worked in an environment where you run into trouble?
Sure, I have.
And how do you handle that? And where's that woman who studied conflict resolution?
Oh, she had to go.
She had to go. Anyway, I thought she might add to this. Yes.
Yeah, I think she would have liked that. This example that I'm giving is from a couple of years ago. I'm on a pre-qualified list for Los Angeles County of public artists, because we have a % for art program, public projects, public money. They have to dedicate some of it towards art on the building. So this is, when was the George Floyd summer?
2020,
All these events of violence, national violence against African American Black community. And I get a letter saying you've been selected to create a mural for the new LAX police station. Now, I had just been somewhere in my neighborhood at a Black Lives Matter demonstration, and I saw that, and I just put it in, I just deleted it. But, you know, it was COVID era, and I was an unemployed artist. So I went back and looked at it, and I reread it, and it said, we're looking for someone that can make some art that will be a response to the violence that has occurred nationally. And then I did some research into,
which is very bold of them.
yes, very bold, and this is what happens because % for art programs, there's different agencies involved. Cultural Affairs was involved. They're very progressive, very pushing certain narratives. And I created a project, and I got the project. It was one of the biggest commissions I'd ever gotten. And I get to create a beautiful mural, you know, with these ideas I had. But I didn't have the project because the police union stepped in. And they didn't like that I was depicting Americans exercising their constitutional rights of assembly and free speech. They were okay with the other things in the mural, but they didn't like that. And I had to go through a series of council meetings, neighborhood council meetings, where I was just, you're violent, you're increasing violence. I can't believe that they even would choose just person after person coming up. And after around 3 months of rearranging things in Cultural Affairs saying, do it this way, and then going, you just hunkered down and did it worse. But you know, it's all right. Hey, are there any teachers in this room? Or,
Quite a
you
few.
know,
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
worked with young people.
Yeah.
You develop these skills of going, okay, let's tell us how you feel, you know? And these are things that political activists often never learn. They never understand, you know, that you need to create dialogue. You need to allow people to talk and say their things, go, oh, good point, and actually.
Is it on the wall or is it not?
So
And did they learn anything from this experience, do you think?
I think they did. One thing was that I had acquired skills of like, who do I have to talk to here in the police force? And what do I have to elevate? So in every point, I would elevate the fact that this was a diverse police force at LAX, the largest police force at any airport in the world. Was an integrated police force in the beginning, started including a police officer that had died from violence at the airport, started telling their story as I pushed my story, but still they wanted to get rid of this whole part of the mural. And finally I said, hey, well, okay, we've been at it for months. I'm on my 5th iteration of this. I'm gonna have to leave the project. And I said to the police chief, what would you do if I was in my shoes? And the police chief said, like, look, the thing is, we're a police force. We don't want to be a flagship of showing anything about protests and everything. What we're about is about people coming in and going out in a safe manner. And as soon as he said that, I was like, yes. Because I don't need to remind you that at the same time all these national acts of violence were occurring, they were separating families down at the border, and the question of who belonged was already, nascent and developing. And so I can show people coming in, and I can show people coming out. Great. So the mural, instead of showing people, I show Guatemalan women in traditional dress coming in, Muslim women coming in. And I got to keep all the flags of the social movements in this country. There's rainbow flags, there's Pan-American flags, there's peace symbols. There's somebody holding a placard that says, I am a man. It shows the diversity and the idea of, oh, people can come and go. And right now, I don't know what kind of, there would be even more opposition to that. But at that moment, since they were so adamant about not showing demonstrators in any way that they had kind of taken the knee to the demonstrators, that I just went with that. And it was the police chief's idea. So I celebrated, it was great, I couldn't have done this, it's incredible, thank you. And I looked over at the police union guy and he was like, And so there it was, and we did paint the mural, and it's there. And it's
That's pretty exciting. So we gotta see this next time we're in LA. Wow. Please, what's your name?
Andrea Seeger.
Andrea Seeger.
And I think my mom might have crossed paths with your dad back in the day. But my question is, where is or was the mural in Rock Creek Park? Because I can't think of it. And are you involved at all in the Mural Arts Project in Philadelphia?
Everybody hear that? Okay.
So the mural was done on big plywood panels, marine plywood panels, and then it was stored for a long time. And like many portable murals that are created, it got all moldy, the paint got messed up, and so the mural just was disintegrated and didn't.
How does it feel to be home? I mean, I know that you have many homes, but how does it feel to be in Washington?
I have a particular love for Washington, D.C. I have a particular love for Washington, D.C. And many years ago, I wrote an essay that was called How I Became an American. And it starts with my earliest recollection. My earliest recollection as a kid is sitting in a room. Women are knitting. It's all Chileans. There's a pot on the stove. There's a black and white TV. And the children are playing and the women are crying, watching the procession of John F. Kennedy on the TV. That's my first recollection. And so many years later, my father gets killed here. Huge recollection of a huge memorial that we made for him. on the streets here, but also particular to what I was talking about, Rock Creek Park. You know, a bombing is messy. There was blood and guts all over the street. When we drove to George Washington Hospital, I saw the emergency vehicles and everything washing down the street. And later I thought about that water washing through the gutters, down into Rock Creek, the C&O Canal, out to the Potomac, out into the Chesapeake Bay, down through the Atlantic, the way all those waters joined. And it really sort of like just helped me create my own mythology of what it is to be an American. And for me, it's, you know, where places meet, where rivers meet, where histories meet. And that's the truth. And that's the science of it.
Questions?
Anybody? You just answered. I was curious
Oh.
about if you had anything.
Oh, about Philadelphia.
The Philly.
I never made it
mural
to
program.
Philadelphia.
Tell us about Philadelphia murals briefly. Why do you ask?
I asked because it's the biggest mural art program in the country. They have almost 4,000 murals in Philly.
Philly has the largest mural art program in the country.
Yeah, and I'm just curious if you participate or if you have any murals in
know-
Philly that I haven't seen
Yeah,
yet.
no, I totally know about the project exactly for that. You know, at one time, Los Angeles was the mural mecca of the United States, but murals were defunded. And then right as Philadelphia had its program, then it ramped up. But the problem is that I live on the West Coast. The commissions aren't enough for you to come across the country and stay and create a mural. And, you know, that kind of mural, because they're not quick murals. I mean, some of them are. I'm not a spray can muralist. I need a little bit of time to do it. So the commission's never, but I have several friends and I know all about the murals in Philadelphia. And one of the younger artists that worked with me in Fresno a few years ago, he's from the Central Valley of Fresno. You know, he's from an immigrant family. He's a dreamer. He came east, finally went to Philly, painted his mural, and then it ended up staying for quite a long while. Yeah.
I just want to remember a muralist I met years ago who is working in, where is she now, Jordan? Is she in Congo? Where is your, yeah, DRC. And she works with children. And she works with them to paint, to teach, to make people feel seen, and to pull them together and to give them agency. And it's called Colors of Connection. And it's a remarkable endeavor in war zones, you know, very tough place. I just want to say that you have a really beautiful heart and not a bad paintbrush either. And it has been my distinct honor to show your work and hear your story and tell it time and time again.
Well, you know, I'm so lucky to have met you and to have recognized you and to be able to work with you, because, you know, often people say, oh, you're an artist? Well, are you in any galleries? And I don't really, you know, because my art is full of ideas that often it's hard to accommodate within a gallery. And so it was so wonderful to meet you and see that you had broad understanding of art and the possibilities of art. And so I'm very grateful to be here.
I'm happy with your energy, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
It was really a beautiful evening. Good stuff. Thanks for coming. Oh, we have a Tuesday at 6 p.m. We are having a very interesting look at DC Maryland, Virginia forests and how they are essential to our living and what we're doing to them and how we can do better. And we're gonna have the head of the DC Forest Commission or something, or Urban Forestry, I've never heard of this before, but she's fabulous. And then the fellow who's the chair of the CNO Canal Conservancy, which has lots of trees. So come on back Tuesday if you have time and interest, and we'll talk. Thank you.